All right, guys. So until now, what we have done so far is we created a virtual machine on our laptop, which will give us a base to install Linux operating system, which is widely used at a company level. So we did create the virtual machine, and we also saw how to install that operating system. So creating virtual machine, installing operating system is not a DBA task, but since we cannot have a system administrator just to do the task for our trainings, we have found out a way to do that one in just one or two classes. So once that is ready, the server which is there with you would be the server which you will get when you work as a DBA. Say if there is a requirement to install new database, then that is what the server which you are currently logging into, that would be the exact server you will be provided with. You will have a host name, that is the name of the server, and you will have all the softwares, required software installed on the server for you. So what is a host name? A host name is nothing but the name of your server, how you want to call that server. You can easily rename the server to the name whatever you want, but it's the host name or the name of the server is just an alias to the IP address. Every server, everything in this electronic world has a IP address, MAC address, and everything, right? Even your laptop has your IP address, your Linux servers have IP address, your mobile has IP address. So that is how everything is tracked, like who is doing what and everything, right? So how do we find a host name or the name of the server? You just type host name. Okay. So here my host name is something called as localhost is my host name, and this is a domain which is like if I say domain, it would be like if you are uh, working for Amazon, it would be if I'm working for Amazon, it would be dev@amazon.com. So amazon.com would be my domain name of the company, which is associated with my email address. So here, since we don't have a domain name, we don't have a company or something associated, so it just defaults to local domain, but your name of the server is localhost. All right. And how do we know what is the IP of the server? These are few commands which you might do once you get that new server, or you have so many servers to take care of when you are a DBA. Suddenly you don't know which server you are, then you just type host name and you'll get to know. Most of the times this host name is related to the type of environment you guys are supporting. In IT world, at least for a DBA, we have development, we have UAT, which is called as acceptance. Let me put it here, that way you guys can. So we have development environment where all the developers do their work. So this will have a DB and application installed. Okay. Then we have something called as UAT, which is called as user acceptance testing. So all the testers will be using the database on in this environment. Again, this has database and application installed. So they will test, they will as and when developers develop a new feature of the application, they do the development in this environment, and they hand over the code to the testing people who install the code and then do the testing in the UAT environment. After UAT environment, once all the testing is done, end-to-end testing is done, they are happy with the results, the code is acting like they wanted, then that code is pushed to production. Prod servers will be there. Again, here also same database, same application, but this application is open to the whole outside world. For example, if it's an Amazon application, then people all over the world are using that one. So you cannot really go and do anything directly in the production environment. Whatever you do, if it causes database to go down, your whole business is down. So that is where the importance of a DBA comes. Always your work is to make sure database is not going down. How do we make sure? We'll see that later. But yeah, that is your work, to make sure DB is going down. So most of the Deployments and code development environment, most of the time developers do it by themselves because they don't know what they're going to end up with. They develop, install, clean it off, again install, clean it off. So that kind of uh, trials keep on happening. And when it comes to UAT and production, that is where the code will be given to DBAs in forms of SQL scripts, and we run those scripts on the database. We connect to the database and we run those scripts on the database. So that is how the things work in IT world. Now, our part is only the database part. Application part, application team will be there, they will take care of it. But when it comes to database, it is our part. So it becomes very important to understand how the database works. So when we say database administrator, a database administrator has to make sure database is up and running, there are no issues, there are no delays in the database, and there are no errors which might cause some future problems to the application or the business. So that is all the part of a database administration. So now let us see what exactly is in the database. How does database work? What are the components of the database which help us? So first of all, when we say database by itself has two components in it. First one is called instance. When we say instance, it's basically the memory structure, right? The RAM which we have on our laptop. And so, for example, in a laptop, we have RAM and storage hard disk, right? Similarly, in database, we have memory structure and the database structure. So memory structure, in this memory structure, all the calculations, all the mathematics, all the code, everything runs in this instance. And all the data, like we saw that day, if you have an employee table and you have that data for employee, all the data will be in the database. When you have to change some data, say you have to change an employee's address, then what database does is it pulls that information from the database, puts it into the instance, changes it, and once the changes are correct, a DBA or developer confirms the changes, or the end user confirms the changes from the application, those changes go into the database. Any questions on this part? This is just I put in simpler terms before I introduce all the small minor components in instance and database.
So
Any
they
question? Mhm.
like there are multiple servers, and we have to get the host name from those servers, right? So in any instance, these chances are there. Like you need to install the database from scratch, or already it will be inbuilt. Like whenever you are working in IT, so will they tell us to install like this database in this server? Like if it is a new server, which is
Yeah, there will be few scenarios where the company is coming up with a new application of like a new feature or new product they are coming up with. Say for example, for initially it was only Facebook, then Instagram came in. So when eventually Facebook purchased Instagram, but assume that Facebook came up with another product which they wanted to store all the data in. In that case, they will create new servers and the DBA has to install new databases in that one. Yes, if the company is doing some new business and they new data want new databases, yes, you will end up doing the installation.
I'm curious to know how you install like the entirely new.
Yeah. Once your servers are ready, right? I'm waiting for your server to get ready. After that, we will do the database install. It's pretty easy, same like the OS install. It's nicely formatted, GUI format, easy to understand. We'll see that once we get there.
Wow. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Instance and database. This is clear. So going further, this is how the layout is, right? So this is our laptop. The blue part is a laptop. On the laptop, we created a virtual machine, which is a yellow part. On that virtual machine, we installed our operating system, which is the Linux operating system, which I'm showing as white color. On that, we will go and install the database. Now here I have shown three databases, three cylindrical figures. A server can have multiple databases, depending on how much resources we have, how much memory and how much storage we have. So here I have put three databases just to show you that you can have more than one database in one server. Depends on how big that server is, how much computing power that server has. Okay. Okay, this is your database, has a complete with all the small components, processes, and everything. So here the let me take a pointer. Okay, here you see the outer part. This one is called the instance, which we saw, and your database is down here, the dotted lines. This is the database. This is your, the whole big box is your instance. So instance is looks bigger than database. That is because it has so much of computing power and operations happening in that one. So that is why it shows, it looks bigger for you, right? Do I get this? Okay. Okay, so instance has many small components, processors like PMON, SMON, RECO, MMON, all these processors, DBWN, CKPT, LGWR, all these are background processes of the database. And this is our instance. This is our this is actually called the database, where all the data goes and resides in this one. Okay. Okay, first let's see about the database instance, right? So database instance, what is a database instance? A database instance is basically a memory of the database. This is where all the running parts, all the changing parts, everything happen in the instance. So a database instance includes something called as background processes, server processes, and process memory allocated for these processes. Okay, and this instance is alive only for the time when your database is up and running. If you see here, let me try to start the database, and you will see that your instance just now this server was shut down, so your database also will go down. Okay. I'll try to start the database, and you will see that it will say that Oracle instance started. So until now, until this point, only the database exists where all the data files are stored. But that is not being accessed anyway. Your application is not touching that. Nothing is getting updated in this data. This data is at rest. No changes happening. Okay. Once I do startup, what this does is this assigns some memory allocated to the server. From the server memory, it will take a part of the memory and it will assign to the database, and it will start all those minor components which we saw in that big box at the top. It will start all those minor components and the processes, and then it will say instances started, right? This is where the instance is started. And once the instance is started, the instance starts accessing the database. It will mount the database, and then it will open the database. We will come to the point where what is database mount, what do you mean by database mounted, what do you mean by database open later. But for now, this is the point where when you start, say startup, to start the database, that is when the instance is actually started, the memory part is also actually started. So this might be a interview question, like what is the difference between instance and a database? As simple as that. So if you are going for like a fresher interview or 1 or 2 years of experience interview, then most of your questions will be the basic concepts of database. So if you remember all the things which I am telling you in this class, then you will excel fine in the interviews. So this instance is basically the memory part. Database is where the data exists. If you say the simple thing, then the interviewer will know that you know what is the difference between an instance and a database. Take it from me, I have seen many DBAs who are working, but still they don't know what is an instance, what is a database. When somebody comes and says, "Can you shut down the instance?" they don't know what to do. They think there is a database. Where is the instance? So instance is just the memory part. Then the data exists in the database. So database mounted and database opened. Okay, that is instance. We'll come to this later. Okay, so instance can be of a database can have one instance or multiple instances. Like the memory component which we saw, it can be it's here. So this big box which we are seeing, that can be one, or we can have more than one. So when we have more than one, it's basically that we have two servers. We have two doors for accessing one set of data. So why this was introduced was, assume something happened to this server, something happened to this instance, then your whole business is down. You cannot afford that. You cannot afford loss just because some component in the server or the instance failed. That is why Oracle came up with this concept of having two instances. In this case, we have two different servers. Like we created a virtual machine here, this one. So we will have two virtual machines and accessing the data stored in a shared location. So two servers, server 1, server 2, and the data is stored in a location which is shared between server 1 and server 2, right? So just in case if server 1 dies for some reason, you still have server 2 and application can connect to server 2 and still the database and still the business is running for you. So that is kind of a feature with which Oracle came up with, which is called as a RAC, real application cluster. So we will come to that later. Just wanted to show you that instances can be more than one also for a database. And here we started the database, right? So when we start the database, database can be in two modes. One is read only mode. Two modes: read only and then read write, right? So read only will allow only to read the data. You cannot insert or update. You cannot run insert queries or update queries. If you try to run any insert query or update query on a read only database, it will clearly say that this database is not open for read write, and it will give an error message. Now if application team is trying to do something on a database which is in a read write mode and it gives an error, you cannot update this database, they are in panic. They are like, why I'm not able to update the database? Let's reach out to the DBA. Now DBA knows that the database is in read only mode, and he will say like, this is in read only mode, why do you want to update this database? Right? Direct answer: no, don't update this database. Let me know what you want to do and I can let you know which database to connect. Then there is second mode which is called as a read write mode. Read write mode is basically you can read, you can write, you can update, insert, delete, whatever you want to do, you can do on a read write mode database. That is about read only. Okay, next is what are the different stages your database goes through when you do a startup. When I did a startup here, when I did a startup of database here, what all happened? We saw database mounted, we saw database opened, we saw instance started, we saw something over here, this bunch, which I'm not telling you what it is, and you are not asking also. So what is this SGA, system global area fixed size, database buffers, redo buffers? What are these basically? So let's see what all happens when the database is starting. Right. So this was the state before we started the database. When I say startup database, first it starts the instance, and the database is in a mount. It's in a mode called as no mount mode. So you cannot really, you in the sense, neither DBA, neither users, neither application can access the database. Only the memory part instance is just initiated. Next comes the mount mode. In mount mode, there is something called as some internal files in the database are accessed, which are called as control files. And at this mount mode, a DBA can access the database. Only a DBA can access the database because a DBA has super privileges. When we are doing some maintenance activities, we can start databases in a mount mode. How do we start database in a mount mode? Instead of startup, we say startup mount. Then it will stop here. At this point, it will stop. Startup mount will stop this at database mounted, and it will not open the database. After that, we can open the database whenever we are done with the maintenance. So most of the DBA activities are happening when database is in mount mode. Why? Because we don't want application to continuously update the data while we are doing maintenance, because we might stop the database at any point of time, which might mess up the data or corrupt the application. That is why we keep in mount mode. That way we guarantee nobody connects to our database and we do the maintenance. After mount mode, automatically when you say startup, it goes to the open mode. In open mode is the final mode where your application can access the database. Okay, that is what happens when you do a startup. And the reverse part is shutdown. When you shut down a database, initially your database is open, then it goes into a close mode. Again, at this point, all the changes are being applied in the database. Then it goes in a no mount mode. Same, this no mount is same, and then finally it is shut down. These are the steps for these are the stages which occur during the startup and shutdown of the database. Again, this also will be a interview question, like what happens when you start a database. What happens is, first this instance is started, and then database is mounted, and then database is opened. Three stages, right? So the below table is basically what all happens, what is the database behavior during a shutdown operation. So shutdown can be done into different modes. One is abort, shutdown immediate, shutdown transactional, and shutdown normal. Most of the times we are allowed to only do shutdown immediate, DBA, because the shutdown immediate will make sure all the changes which are happened on the database are uh, are applied to the data in the storage, and everything is stopped correctly. If you do shutdown abort, it does not uh, make sure the data changes are applied to the storage, and next time after shutdown abort, when you're starting the database, it's going to show you some weird errors, like it might complain about data corruption, it might complain about some data is missing, and all those things will happen. For that, again, you'll have to reach Oracle support to get help. So it's always recommended to do shutdown immediate. That will take care of it. Shutdown normal and transactional will take too much time to shut down. Eventually it will shut down. These are also good ways. But if a DBA wants to do something, he will always do shutdown immediate. How do we do shutdown immediate? Same SQL plus command line. Here you are in SQL plus shutdown immediate. So to start the database, startup, and to stop the database, shut down immediate. So database is closed, database is dismounted, and then it is instance is stopped. When you are connecting to a stopped database, you'll always see this connected to idle instance. If you did a SQL plus, let me exit and come again. If you did a SQL plus and you see this connected to idle instance, that means your database is stopped. You need to start the database. Okay, and when you connect to SQL plus, your database version is shown here. So if somebody asks you what are the different ways to find a version of a database, interview question again. So one way is you just connect to SQL plus, you'll find the version of the database. Second is there are few tables in the database which will show you the version of the database. So two options to check the version of database. Okay, so that is about start and stop of database. We have not still gone into the details of the architecture. We will see that in next consecutive chapters. So, okay.
So they upon every check-in, does this instance will created? Like whenever we uh, check in into the database, this DB instance is created every time.
When you say check-in, you mean startup?
Yes.
Yeah, every time we do the startup, this is created. The instance is nothing but memory. It is going to assign memory. See, here when you do the startup, right?
No, means why is then that need? Like, can't it be a static thing?
Can't the memory be a static thing?
Yeah, we can allocate like this is like the maximum number of bytes or the memory is like needed for every time you get into this particular database. Like why of the tedious job to us allocating the memory every time we check in into the database?
That is because the memory part has transactional changes happening, right? Say change what is that? Employee's address is being changed in an employee table. Okay, so those blocks which contain that information. Let me jump a little bit further on this one. Okay. So your data is stored at the block level in a database. We'll come to this. This is a little bit further. So data is stored in the block level. So if you are updating employee's say address, it will come down to here and it is going to pick up that block and take it into the memory. It is going to put into the memory which is in this small box which is called database buffer cache. It puts that data into here, changes that one, and once the user says okay, I confirm that these changes are good, that is when these changes go down to the database. So why this is needed to be created everything, we are not really creating something, we are just allocating sizes for this buffer cache, shared pool, large pool, and all this, because these are not these need not be a permanent structures. These can be a temporary structures where temporary information changes happen and they get back. So it's same to your a notepad, right? Yeah, earlier, not now. Earlier notepad was not saving changes because you don't use notepad to save you generally use notepad for some random noting down of points and everything, unless you want to save that file. If you save that file, that is when it goes into the database. If you don't save, it is still here, you can access it anytime. But when you shut down the database, anything which is not permanent, it's going to go away. If
Like
you
that's
keep
the
this
cache
permanent,
memory.
yeah.
Cache memory.
Sorry.
This is the cache memory you're saying, right? The cache memory is like just
Yeah,
temporary.
cache memory. Yeah, temporary memory. Yes, but it is assigned every time. Every time you start the database.
Yeah, got
Yeah. All right. In this, okay, just
Dave, I have one question.
yeah,
You said for the shutdown, they have different
command.
images.
Okay, here this one.
Yeah, so you have this abort, immediate, and transactional and normal. So what is the difference between that? I mean, the steps will be different for each of these.
Okay. Yeah. So the difference is just here I give shutdown immediate, right? The command wise, it's instead of shutdown immediate, if I want to do shutdown in a normal way, I'll give shutdown normal.
Mhm.
If I want to do transactional, shutdown transactional. And if I want to do shutdown abort, it will be shutdown abort. Shutdown word is common, just the mode in which you want to shut down, that will change.
So yeah, but what is the difference between the? I mean,
Okay.
different modes.
Okay.
Why? Because we
Yeah.
are using immediate. So
Yeah.
why not normal or?
Okay. So shutdown, let me come with abort. Let's go first with abort. So what happens in abort is when you do shutdown abort, it is not going to stop new connections to the database. It is not going to wait until the current transaction. If any query is running which is changing some data into the database, it is not going to stop it is not going to wait until that query completes. And it does not wait until current user session. If I have logged in into user, say for example, you have logged in into a Bank of America website, and suddenly DBA is shut down abort, and you are trying to do some transaction. In that case, your first of all, it does not wait for your transactions to complete. That is, your current session is not, it does not wait for a current session. And your current transaction, if you are transferring some money from your checking to savings or something like that, it does not wait for that one also to finish. And it does not make sure that the changes have been recorded. So next time when the database, Bank of America database comes up and you have the application access, then your transactions are not sure to show up. You might see, if you're trying to transfer $1,000 from checking to saving, you might see $1,000 in a checking, $1,000 in a saving. That might be a problem for the bank. Or you might see $0 in a checking, $0 in your savings. That is a problem for you. So that is what happens in abort. But when you do shutdown immediate, what happens is uh, it it does not permit new connections, and it waits until it does not wait until the sessions end, like it happened in the abort. It does not wait until current transactions finish, but the main point it does is it performs a check, something called as a checkpoint. Okay, so checkpoint makes sure that the changes have been saved in the database.
Okay.
Yeah, just a minute.